Welcome to this CPD video on football coaching practices. As the head of a sport for a standard school sports academy, I will look to address the arising issues of football coaching practices between the local football academy and the school's teaching methods. Through this presentation, I'm looking to delve deeper into the training methods used by the academy and our school. I would like to address the academic resources from both independent research and the research brought forward by my staff. One of our Year 8 pupils, who has recently been attending training sessions with Big Time Football Academy, has expressed her feelings to me about the way her PE lessons are taught in comparison to the Football Academy. She stated that she feels she is pushed more in the academy sessions as they are more advanced, whereas her current PE lessons are very basic and less enjoyable. Firstly, because of the positive feedback from our Year 8 pupil, I chose to look at the training methods used by the academy. I hope to find out why they are enjoyable for the children and how they could possibly be incorporated into our PE lessons. The academy uses futsal in their training sessions. This creates a more competitive environment for the players. With changes to certain aspects of the game, the players are forced to change their style of play. Dynamical pattern theory links in with this method, as it is based around the idea that systems change over time to become stable. In other words, the different aspects of the game are changed in order for the players to advance. When learning and performing new skills, the athlete must pass through stable and unstable patterns to fully understand the movements. This is known as phase shift. The table below highlights figures obtained from the Sports Science Department of the FA and FIFA. They show that futsal promotes more interaction with the players and the ball. The unstable phase of this is the constraint of having a smaller area. Therefore, the players touch the ball far more regularly. By playing constantly, they get more practice, and eventually this leads to the stable phase, where the skills can be performed more accurately and with more confidence. As mentioned in dynamical pattern theory, the constraints within futsal are put in place to enhance the player's development. Newell's model explains the different constraints on the athlete, both naturally occurring and purpose-built constraints. Organismic constraints refers to a person's characteristics such as genes, height, weight, muscle-fat ratio, connective strength of the synapses in the brain, cognitions, motivations, and emotions. An example of this would be a child with a physical disability would have completely different constraints on their ability to learn a new skill. I think that our Year 8 pupil may find the academy more appealing because she is around children of a similar ability to her, meaning she is constantly learning new things. Environmental constraints are global physical variables in nature, such as ambient light, temperature, or altitude. From an academy perspective, they have the funds for facilities such as AstroTurf and floodlit pitches. This means the children can play at any time of the day and in most weather situations. Task constraints are usually more specific to the performance context than environmental constraints are, and include task goals, specific rules associated with an activity, activity-related implements or tools, surfaces, ground areas, and pitches and boundary markings such as nets, lines, markings, and posts. The game of futsal constricts the size of the pitch and uses a heavier ball. This makes the play more skillful and encourages the children to work on their passing in tighter areas with more pressure applied on them. The size of the pitch also makes it harder for the players to find space, which means they need to choose carefully their movement, passing, and decision-making skills. As you can see from the figure shown, the three constraints in Newell's model must be constantly taken into account, as they are a continuous cycle and at any one point have an effect on the player. As you can see from the England Under-21 training session, there are certain constraints put in place. Just like the game of futsal, constraints on the size and space of the area are used. Because of the task constraints, the players will have to work harder to find the right passes and to find space to receive a pass. When these skills are transferred across into a full-size football match, it is much easier to find space and make passes, as shown here by Barcelona, considered by many to be the best passing team in the world. Barcelona also use the game of futsal in their academy training, and over the years this academy has produced some of the best players in the world.
As you can see from the research and videos, the Academy is using current training techniques which are used by professional football teams around the world. As the head of the sports department at my school, I feel it's important to address this as a recent complaint from one of our Year 8 pupils that attends the football academy have suggested that the teaching style used in PE lessons is outdated. After undergoing research into the football academy and their training techniques, I felt it would be beneficial to look into our PE lessons taught within our school. From the research into how the PE lessons are being taught, hopefully it will become clear to me and my team what changes and developments are needed to make the classes more enjoyable and suitable for our pupils. After a meeting with the PE teacher in question, one of the methods that he uses was understood to be grooving in method. Upon looking further into this, it became apparent that it was a repetitive practice used to imprint patterns in the memory whilst unopposed. This method is backed up by the general motor program theory. As you can see from the figure on screen, there are 4 segments of learning. Initial conditions, which is the feedback of how and why the action is being performed. Expected response outcomes, which is what is expected to happen. Response specifications, which is the planning of the action before being performed. And lastly, actual consequences, which is what happened, was the skill accomplished, and was there errors. All 4 segments are taken into consideration when learning new skills and practices within the school. These practices are unopposed as the teacher feels it's easier to store the technique in the player's memory. As the trainings are unopposed, the players are not practicing any form of decision-making skills. Because of this, I looked into open and closed loop theory, Adams theory, and schema theory. Open loop and schema theory are related to the unopposed grooving in method as it has no mechanisms for motor sensory feedback. Due to it being unopposed, the child does not need to worry about outside influences, i.e. another player, so there is no decision-making process. They are just repeating the same skill. This is in contrast to the academy, in which they use opposed practice. This allows for the ongoing corrections to be made during the practice, as they will need to use decision-making skills when they come up against the opposition. This constant feedback relates to closed-loop theory and Adams theory. As shown in the diagram, open-loop control starts with the sensory input and ends with the response, as opposed to closed-loop, which carries on from the response with the response-produced feedback and then starts the cycle again with the sensory input. After speaking to my teacher, they mentioned they use part practice in their teaching. This is to help players learn the skill in isolation. Methods in which they may use are part method, where the parts of the skill are practiced in isolation, which is useful for complicated and serial skills and is good for maintaining motivation and focus on specific elements of the skill. It is possible, however, that the transfer of skills from parts to whole may not be very effective, and it may also reduce the kinesthetic awareness for the full skill. They may also use whole part whole method, where the whole skill is first demonstrated and practiced before being broken down into the constituent parts of the practice, the individual elements, and improve on these. Before putting the whole skill back together, this can be very effective in skills which have easily distinguished parts, which can be broken down.
Here, the video shows training methods used by Schalke under-19s. You can see from the quality of the video that this is an old training session, and these methods are rarely used by academies now. It shows players passing and moving around the cones. The players pass the ball into the same way each circuit and make the same movement and runs. The coach does this in order to groove in the passing and movement into the player's schema. According to Fitz, this constant unopposed repetition of the skill means that when it is transferred to a game situation, the players will be able to execute it with precision. This is the same technique used in our PE lessons. In this drill, the coach is practicing passing in a straight line between the player and the goalkeeper. The coach wants a certain type of pass and encourages every player to strike the ball in the same way. He stops the player here to use part practice and break up the skill. He stops the player at impact with the ball to show the position of the foot where he should be striking it. He uses part practice to break down the skill to help the player strike the ball as he wants. By isolating this point, it is easier for the player to learn.
After the research into the training methods used by the school and the academy, I've come up with some developments that can be used within the school. I feel it is best to embrace some of the academy's training methods. By using constraints in training such as using futsal, it will develop certain aspects of the children's game which fit in with modern football. This will also lead to more opposed training, which will mean the children are more comfortable in a competitive environment when in a match. By also using less formalised drills, it will mean the children can just play. The coach or the teacher can observe and intervene when they feel they can help. This creates more individuality, as players can come up with their own styles of passing, dribbling, shooting, etc. This idea of just letting the children play in opposed small tight areas comes from the Academy's philosophy of pelada, which is the Brazilian version of street football. If we want to produce world-class players such as Ronaldo and Messi, it is a good idea to copy the ways in which they learnt the game. In summary, the CPD video shows the differences between the Academy and schools training methods. Although our staff are very experienced and highly qualified, it is essential to continually develop the skills and methods so that all teaching for the children is current. It is vital that the methods spoke about in this video are put in place and used within football sessions in the school. It is also important that the development within our school and lessons does not stop here, but continues for the education of our children. Thank you for watching this CPD video.